Anyhow. So it's good. It's a shorter race today, so it's not really the end of the world that we're starting late. All those who are not with us, you should have it in mind. So, Parak Beis, we were talking last time about the concept that Goyim and Erdik Chavim, Goyim sort of Zara and Sitra Achara, things which are in holiness, they receive vitality from Hashem in a backhanded kind of way. Bechinas Achirayim is what it's called. In general, there's a pasuk in Yechezkel that says that you should write the scroll Panim v'Acher, and the concept of Panim and Achirayim is something that's very much discussed throughout Chassidus. It's actually in Samach Vav. There was Samach Vav is a hemshech. It's like 720 pages, and it's one idea throughout, and it's so much one cohesive idea throughout that there's at one point that it said we need to explain the concept of Panim and Acher in order to understand this, and it starts explaining the concept of Panim, and if I remember correctly, started by explaining Panim. And then, some like 100 pages later, when you were like very deeply entrenched in the concept of Panim, it said, and this is and now we need to explain the concept of Acher. And there's like a footnote, and Baruch Hashem is a footnote. I was very confused. I was like, where's Acher flying into this minor? No, apparently, some 120 pages ago, it started with Panim, and it still hadn't finished, and it was the same idea all throughout, so it had to continue to Acher. The point is that Panim and Acher. So Sitra Achra gets from the level of Achirayim, it gets from the other side. But Yidden get sustenance in a more internal aspect. And the level of Achirayim is like a person that gives begrudgingly, and the epidose is that it's given with your will. And the mashal that we gave for this was you have a king, and the king makes a banquet for his ministers and his high servants. And obviously there's going to be other people, there could be leftovers, and the servants and the maids and whatever it is, they all need to eat. So they do eat, and they eat the leftovers from the meal, or whatever it is. But the purpose of the meal, the purpose of the employment of everyone, whatever it is not for the purpose of the maids and the cooks and the dogs that are going to eat the bones. The purpose is for the ministers, and that the ministers should enjoy the banquet. So the ministers receive from the king in a way of panim, and the maids and the cooks and the dogs, they all receive in a way of acher. The nimshal from all of this, it can be understood, the takeaway, what the example is coming to explain, what the analogy is coming to explain. It can be understood how it's understood to someone who thinks as it refers to above. Seeing as the level of premise of Hashem's Ratzain is what shines to the Yidden Dafka. It says, Yar Hashem Panav Elecha Dafka. It says in Rechus Kainim that the Kehanim bench the Yidden that you should bench that you should shine your panim to them, not just panim that like you should like your face. Hashem doesn't have a face. It means that the level of panim should be shined upon the Yidden. It's actually funny. There's another passage like that says that Hashem le yisafanim. Hashem doesn't show His face to anyone, and there's a midrash that explains whatever. But the Yidden are taka on that level that we receive from the level of panim. That is to say, through what we can draw down from Hashem's will, which shines through Torah and mitzvahs dafka. The ikar of Chachma of Torah is drawn from the inner aspect of Hashem's will. Because the whole concept of Torah is Chachma, of how you can draw down Atzmos of Eri and Seif. The level of Eri Seif. So in order to draw down the level of Eri Seif, what Eri Seif is very complicated, and Taka could go for hours and hours and hours on end to try to explain what Eri Seif is. But essentially what Eri Seif is it's something which permeates everything. The example that you would give, that I would give, just because it says Shubak and Asatz and Elyon, is the example that you have, let's say, intellect, and when you think in your mind, you have say there's shalshlos, that you have a thought in your mind, and it maybe will affect your heart, maybe it'll affect different things, but everything goes down in a chain of command. When you have a will, even though you have a charge that goes through your nerves from your brain, but ultimately when you have a will, you don't need to think. There's no order of command. There's no that you have a thought, and you know that from the thought you need to have a feeling, and from the feeling you need to have an action or whatever it is. There's no order like that. You just want to move your hand, and your hand moves. It's fascinating. You can just move your hand. I don't know if you ever thought about it.
I think about breathing.
Yeah.
Breathing becomes, now that I think about it
now that you think about it, the breathing.
But otherwise it's just a natural thing that happens. You don't actually have to think about it whatsoever.
Yeah, so will is something that you just, there's no order. There's just, it happens. So Seviv is, I'm just explaining it like this for the sake of this particular part, because it gives that example, but there's really so much more to it. But in a sense, you have different levels of light, of godliness, and in general, the world is made in a way of a molecule, and that you have the highest level, and then from the highest level there's a trickle down, a flow down, whatever it's called, and I'm sure that's called like trickle down economics, something like that. How you have from the high level it gets all the way to the low level. So you have the great hashpah, the spirit, the great spirituality at top, and then it all gets down. An example of this that you could see, that you could observe in the real world, is the sun is a daemon. The sun is an inanimate object, and it has an intense amount of energy. The amount of energy on the sun could and does power life on Earth, and virtually all of the energy that we have, I think, has ultimately come from the sun, because even the fossils and whatnot, I'm saying it's all, actually fossils are lavdafki, you also have natural gas deposits. The point is that the vast majority of the energy that we consume on Earth comes from the sun. Then you have plants, and the plants grow from the sun. The plants have a minuscule fraction, not even, it's like so hard to say a fraction, because it's like one quadrillionth or whatever it is of the energy from the sun, but the plants have it. Then the animals eat the plants, and animals are less efficient energy sources than plants, because the animals eat the plants. They need to utilize some of the energy for themselves to grow, and they have less energy. And then people eat the plants or whatever, and we're at the top of the food chain, we're at the bottom of the energy chain. That the amount of energy, the amount of things that the energy needs to pass through in order to reach us, and it gets so much lessened that ultimately 1 unit of energy from the sun would end up being a tiny fraction. We would only end up getting a tiny fraction of that. So that's how it works with Mimale, that you have a great hashpah at the beginning, and then it goes down, and then you're able to appreciate it only at the bottom, when it's basically been chipped away to virtually nothing of what it originally was. Then you have Seviv. Seviv is a much more encompassing light of Hashem. It's in a sense, it also, it treats everything as the same, and because everything really is the same relative to Hashem in this world, because this world is a non-existence relative to Him. So the notion of you have this level as a higher level and this level as a lower level doesn't really make sense in Seviv, because everything in the world is equally nothing. On the one hand, that makes things seem low, and it doesn't necessarily make things seem low as much as it gives more to things which are lower. We say that, like, we're coming up to Purim a little bit, so it says that Haman wanted to try to destroy the Jews, not reaching through Mimale, but reaching through Seviv. He wanted to reach through a level that's higher than this world, a level at which Jews and Goyim are the same. Kaviyachol. I don't know if you say Kaviyachol about Yidden and Goy. Yeah, but Lahavdil. Yidden and Goy, he wanted to reach a level where the Hashpah is the same. By Seviv, where the world is all equally nothing, at that level, the Hashpah is all the same.
Really, even for Goyim and a Jew? Yeah,
because of Yidden and Goy. Really, there's a level higher than that, but that's not the point. But
I would have thought the light that comes through would have been slightly different.
No, because by Seviv, everything is equally nothing. You can't have 2 zeros that are... different infinities could have, you can play with the order of infinity and with the magnitude of the infinity, Aleph null, Aleph 1, whatever it is. But with Seviv, with 0, you can't get less. You can have less than 0, but you can't have something that's more nothing than 0. So the Hainu is if in Tisera, I'm shocked to say. So we were saying before we got caught up in Seviv, before I got caught up in Seviv, that the whole union of the Chachma of Torah is how there should be Amshacha of Atzmos, of Ein Seif, and a level of Seviv Kol, and that it should come down how we should be able to bring down Ein Seif. This is what Hashem decreed in His Chachma, in the Chachma of Torah, in the concept of the 248 mitzvahs aseh. That with them, particularly, you can have a revelation of Ein Seif down here. It's funny, I use this as an analogy from the Megillah. But anyhow, as it's known that the 248 mitzvahs say, are the 248 hamshachas from the 248 things which are drawn from Ur and Seif and the level of Hashem's will, in order to shine light into various different kelim. K'mayal the tefilin yenimshach k'kinas rasan elyin dalad meichin chachma ubina v'das shenechal k'chassid l'gvara l'dei dalad parshes. So through tefillin, we're able to draw down Hashem's will into our four intellectual faculties of chachma and bina, and then das. And das is the concept of being able to take chachma and bina and being able to transfer it and transform it to a certain degree into midas. So in general, the two midas that are immediately under das are chesed and gvura, and they're not mamash like opposed. It's not like there's no interaction between them, but they're in general two opposite sides of the spectrum. So das is considered to be divided into two parts, so das of chesed and das that brings to gvura. So we're able to shine the Hashem's will in chachma bina and the two kinds of das through putting on tefillin and through the four parshas of tefillin. Hamshach zei hi v'atzilus. V'edim espiri yitzir asiyah asher nimshach omer gam ba'adam lamata ha'isa es ha-mitzvah miniach tefillin. And this hamshacha happens in atzilus and in the worlds of biyah, the spiritual worlds of biyah, because there's a asiyah ruchni and there's a asiyah gashmi. We're in the world of asiyah in a physical sense, and there's also a more spiritual notion of the world of asiyah. So it gets drawn down in a spiritual sense in atzilus and in the worlds of biyah, until ultimately it gets down to a person who's actually putting on tefillin. Over mitzvah tzitzis, and in the mitzvah tzitzis, yid gilei er and seif b'lama beis and seif is chachma. So when a person wears tzitzis, he's having a relation of er and seif in the 32 pathways of chachma. There's 32 strands of the tzitzis. So over mitzvah tzedakah, yar er and seif baruch hu mimilat chesed. When a person gives tzedakah, he's causing a revelation of er and seif in chesed. And also in the mitzvah of, and also like this with other mitzvahs, like with sukkah, you have a revelation in makifim of imam, and in esed you have a revelation in malchus, and so on and so forth with all other mitzvahs. שגזר לעשות הסוכר והתפילין והעסק באיסי איפן שעל ידי זה יהיה דווקא המשך גילי ארן ספר ולא יהיה על איפן אחר זה לעשות. All of this is only accomplished according to the wisdom of Torah. The Torah decreed that the sukkah and the tefillin and the esrog should be made in such and such a way, dafka. The tefillin, you can't have five compartments, you need to have 4 compartments. The sukkah needs to have 3 walls and not 2. And not.
Why not have 2.5?
2 and a little bit, but a little bit is considered to be a 3rd wall. It needs to fulfill the requirements of the other walls. It's complicated. It's Hilchos Sukkah is very. I was just having a whole conversation yesterday about Hilchos Sukkah. Whatever. I'm thinking about the conversation now. We're going to continue with the timer. No, Hilchos Sukkah is not very good. But yeah, you have a lot of interesting laws. Sukkah. I need to say the joke, but there's once a guy called his Rav, and he said, I left things in my sukkah. My sukkah was enclosed by 4 halachic walls. I used lavel and I used godasik. There was a 3-inch gap from the bottom of the sukkah, and there were a bunch of gaps in the middle. But ultimately, halachically, it was all sealed, 4 walls all around. And someone got into my sukkah and they stole my stuff from my sukkah. He said, "How could someone do that if halachically the sukkah had 4 walls?" So the Rav thought for a second. He said, "It must be the guy wasn't such a London. He didn't realize that the sukkah had 4 walls." The point is that there's a lot of complications with Hilchos Sukkah, there's a lot of complications with all of these things, and all of these details are dafka. They're the parameters for how to draw down the godly revelation. In a sense, it's a little bit. It's a little bit funny when people like on the Psalm or whatever it is say, "Oh, I'm a spiritual person. I don't need tefillin," or whatever it is. It's not like you're a bad person if you're not putting on tefillin, chas v'shalom. That's not what the point is. But it's like the equivalent of saying I'm a spiritual person. I don't need a cell phone to talk to people across the Pacific. This is what you do. If you want to have hamshacha of godliness into your mechin, then you put on tefillin. And there's not many mitzvahs that I've seen people cry, but usually it's the mitzvahs that have some kind of connection to mechin. That like when I've seen people like put on tefillin for like the first time in a long time or whatever, and they start crying, even if they're not like particularly religious, even if it didn't have so much particular significance, because I would venture to say the reason why is because there's such an overload of shachal into their minds that when you have too much going on in your mind, you cry. But the point is that this is how the Amshacha comes down. And so too, the Torah decreed with 365 mitzvahs not to do. There are many things which they withhold and they hide gilui of er and seif. And you need to stop that which holds back the Amshacha from every side. And these are all of the little details in mitzvahs leisaseh. Like not wearing shatnez, and not eating forbidden fats. And the like with 365 mitzvahs that through the forcing that you're not doing the thing, that you're forcing yourself to not do the thing and being careful in this. So you're taking away the klipa, you're taking away the sitra achra that are in this thing that otherwise would be withholding a revelation of godliness in the thing. Makes sense? Any questions?
No.
Alright. Kitzur, previous Ratzain, Nimshach Yisrael, Vuhal Yedetero Mitzvahs. So the inner aspect of Hashem's will is drawn to the Yidden, and it's through Torah and Mitzvahs. The whole Inyan HaTorah, Hu Amshachas Era Seviv Be'elamis. The entire concept of Torah is drawing down light of Seviv into the world. Ramachas Asehim Hamshachas Bakelim. The 248 mitzvahs Aseh are things which are drawn down into vessels, like for example tefilin mitzitzis, tzaka soko esreg mitzvahs Aseh the hosted activities sitra achra ameinim gilir and safe, and the mitzvahs Aseh are to take away the klippos and the sitra achra that's withholding the revelation of er and safe.
What about if someone, let's use the example, you find someone on the street, say, do you want to put on tefillin? And they're very reluctant to do it. They say yes, but you can tell by the way that they act, they're like, just get it over with. Do they still bring down that same light?
If they're intending to do the mitzvah, yeah.
So they have to have the intention of it. Even if they're really reluctant, they still have the intention.
Yeah, I mean, as long as they know that they're doing the mitzvah, even if they're reluctant. So, yeah.
When you mean that they know they're doing the mitzvah, let's say you meet someone who tells you they're Jewish, but they have no idea of Judaism whatsoever.
So you say, this is a mitzvah, Hashem told you to put on tefillin, and that's the ikar.
And same, if we go from the negative aspect as well, let's say someone's forced to eat something that's not kosher. They're forced to eat, we'll use the forbidden fats.
Yeah.
Does that block light from coming in?
So
they've been forced.
So it's interesting because they're being forced. They're not held responsible. That being said, there is something to be said that it is a negative thing that's happening to the person, whether it's something that they appreciate or not. This is one of the reasons why we're careful with kashrus with kids, even though technically a kid is, to a certain degree, depending on who needs to watch out for them or whatnot. There's a bunch of different parameters, but in general, a kid, we're not really responsible if they do an avera for their own enjoyment. But we do this because you are what you eat, and kosher is very important for who you are. Actually, the reason why you wouldn't be chayev if someone forces you to eat something, as in assuming that you actually have an appetite and everything else is the proper conditions. The reason why you wouldn't be chayev is because of a simple rule in Torah that eines rachmana pater. Hashem says that it's not your responsibility if it was against your will. But on the flip side, if a person eats matzah without knowing what they're doing, without knowing what they're eating.
You're talking on Pesach at a Seder, for example.
What?
You're talking on Pesach at
a
Seder.
Yeah, on Pesach, yeah. As long as, so there's a Ran that says that it needs to be as long as he knows that it's matzah and as long as he knows that it's Pesach. I don't know if it's the Reis or the Rabbanon or whatever it is, but the gist of the notion is that a person could eat matzah, kind of accidentally, not intending to do the mitzvah at all. And not only that, but a person could be force-fed matzah. And he's yotze the mitzvah.
Oh, he's yotze?
He's yotze. As in, if you have a person and he was fry, and someone force-fed him matzah, and then he decided afterwards, you know what, I want to be from, I want to do the mitzvah properly, I want to do it at my own volition, he can't make a bracha anymore because he already did the mitzvah. So, amen. So, there is a certain aspect that also applies in a certain sense in the flip side, but obviously a person is a chayav for something that they weren't able to do. So,
It's more that whether that light gets blocked for them, because there's so many things. I mean, Chas v'Shalom should happen to anyone, but there's so many instances in history where people have been put in positions where they haven't had any choice in regards to certain mitzvahs.
Yeah, I mean, so my great grandfather, if I'm not mistaken, died because he didn't want to eat not kosher food. Because he said, like, am I allowed to halachically? I'm allowed to halachically. I don't want to have not kosher food.
In Russia or in the whole?
I think it was Russia. So somewhere around there. Nowadays you need to be very specific about the region. But I can't say how much that I'm from Russia because that's not a good look.
I just say Russia in general. I don't know if that really works in this film, but I just